Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. I am the Chubby Gourmet. My name is Rich, and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be cooking my rendition of an authentic Cajun dish called jambalaya. In New Orleans, very popular dish. I actually spent a little bit of time in New Orleans, and I just want to do a shout out to a head chef at one of the restaurants near Bourbon Street. Thank you, Anna, for your information, your tips, your tricks, and all the tidbits that you shared with me. Greatly appreciated, and they're going to go to good use. So I think the first thing I'd like to talk about, and I'm kind of very picky about ingredients. As Emeril Lagasse once said, a great meal starts with great ingredients. And I couldn't agree with him more. The jambalaya, the primary or first set of ingredients, is called the Holy Trinity. The Holy Trinity is a mirepoix minus the carrots and using a bell pepper in its place. So it's onions, and I do want to make the point that my preference for onions, I actually like the Spanish onion. Reason being, it's not as sweet as a Vidalia, or the Vidalia would actually work as well. It's not as harsh as a plain yellow onion or a white onion, which would be very harsh. I think it blends with the ingredients very nicely. So I'm using Spanish onions. You could use whatever onion you like. I'm just giving you my recommendation, from experience, what I think brings everything together well. Celery and bell pepper. That's called the Holy Trinity. In addition to that, as I'm a huge fan of garlic, we're also going to be adding some fresh garlic. And on top of that, I have my own spice mix that I've developed over the years. And again, it's to my taste. I will be including in the description below a recipe for this. And so if you can either use the same mix that I'm using, or you could change it. It's cooking. There's no rules when it comes to cooking. Except my mom, she had one rule, and it was get the hell out of my kitchen. But aside from that, there are no rules in cooking. You got to do what you like. So we're going to dice our onions. We're going to saute the onions, actually, not until fully caramelized, but we are going to saute the onions so that they're brown. Not dark brown, but a light brown. And that's actually pretty important in the jambalaya dish. Right now, I'm focusing on not cutting my fingers off. Gordon Ramsay would not only have had these 3 onions diced and sizzling in oil by now, he would be cooking some meat, and he'd be doing all kinds of things by now. He'd actually have the meal served by now, in fact. So I think we've got more than enough onion. I used 2 very large Spanish onions, and we are going to be sauteing those first. Next, I'm just going to chop up the garlic. I'm going to chop up the celery and the bell pepper. Those will get added after we've spent a good amount of time sauteing and getting the onions slightly brown. So now, if you thought slicing onions was slow, get a load of this. If anyone needs to take a bathroom break in the meantime, now would be a good time. And the ratios that I'm using are not etched in stone. If you happen to be a big fan of celery and want to use a lot of celery, me, not necessarily, but you may like it, so you can go and add an extra stalk or 2. Some people have asked me, honestly, in the past, which type of bell pepper do you like? Yellow, orange, green, red, etc., etc. It's the same pepper. The darker it is, the closer to red it is, I should say, the more mature it is. That's the only difference. Keep in mind, with a red bell pepper, you're going to be paying about twice as much as you would with a green bell pepper. But if you like red, presentation is important in cooking as well. If you like the red, by all means, use the red. A key ingredient in all Cajun cooking is andouille sausage. So I have some authentic andouille sausage, about 1.5 pounds of it, which is plenty for what we're doing here today. And what I'm going to do is I like getting my ingredients all prepped, so I don't go running around looking for things, for next step. So what I'm going to do now is just simply dice this guy up, or actually not dice, just slice it up and have it to the side. Because after our trinity and our garlic are cooked, the first meat that we're going to be adding is the andouille sausage. As tempting as it is to make a sausage joke, I will refrain from doing so. Next, what we're going to do, we're going to be sautéing our lovely Spanish onions. And I'd like to talk a little bit about oils. What oil do I want to saute in? And again, attention to details makes the difference. I think for a jambalaya dish, avocado oil, any brand, it doesn't matter, but I just think avocado oil is a great oil that imparts a nice mild background flavor and helps join together all the flavors that we're adding here in this seafood dish. It is a seafood jambalaya. So I'm going to add about 2 or 3 tablespoons of avocado oil to our beautiful Dutch oven. We're using a cast iron Dutch oven, pre-seasoned of course. And for that reason, just another little bit of information, you'll always hear professional chefs say, hey, always add oil to a hot pan. If it's a seasoned cast iron, it's not as vital actually, but I still follow that general rule all times. So this baby is hot. I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of avocado oil. Make it 3 tablespoons. It's good for you after all. I'm just trying to get all the little bits of onion all coated with that avocado oil. And this is going to be a bit of a process. It can take maybe 15 to 20 minutes before these are actually sauteed and browned, at which point we'll add the rest of the trinity and our sliced garlic. You can see the avocado oil, more so than like olive oil or canola oil, actually starts to impart this kind of like whitish, greenish color to the onions. At this point, this is going to take a little while. We're still sauteing the onions. As I warned you, this is going to take a little bit of upfront time. As you can see, we're very slowly starting to caramelize. Starting to turn from translucent to a light brown, but we still got a little ways to go yet. Overall, it should take about 15 to 20 minutes of sauteing the onions and getting them where we like them before we add the rest of the vegetables. We're getting close to that point now that the onions are becoming a light brown. You don't want to burn the onions. And in a cast iron pot or pan or anything cast iron, it's like a radiator. So it not only heats up, but it retains that heat. After you lower the temperature, it's not going to come right down in temperature right away. I've lowered the temperature some, but still got to keep an eye on this and stir and make sure I don't burn the onions. I just want that sweet caramelization. So that's a light brown. You can argue it could go a little bit longer too, but it's going to be cooking with all the other ingredients as well. So the onions aren't left out of the equation after we're done sauteing them. They're still going to be cooking with all the other ingredients. Next we'll be adding the rest of the trinity. That is the celery and the bell pepper. And we're going to add the sliced garlic as well. Just want to get this incorporated well. Then I will add the garlic. That's our 6 cloves of garlic that we peeled before. Now we're going to add the first of our meats. get this well incorporated. And I'm actually going to use the lid on the Dutch oven, let this simmer down for 7 minutes or so. After the andouille and veggies are cooked down, we're going to be adding the shrimp. We're going to add our seasoning. We're going to let that cook down, and then we're going to add 1 pound of blue claw crab. Okay, so let's see how our shrimp is doing. Oh, so many great smells coming out of here at the same time. Now we're going to throw in our crab. And just when you thought it was safe, there's one more protein we're going to be adding. Fourth meat that we're using is alligator. Again, if you're not a fan of alligator, you could always substitute anything you want. It's jambalaya. You could use chicken if you like, or don't even add a fourth protein. One thing I will comment on with alligator, well, 2 things I want to comment on. One, as I mentioned with the shrimp, I don't like farm raised. And same with alligator. And I'll also have in the description below a link to where you can purchase wild caught, licensed wild caught, all legal and proper alligator. And they'll ship anywhere in the country, the United States that is. One thing, especially with wild, I know this doesn't look like alligator right now, this is buttermilk that has been soaking in for the last few hours in the refrigerator. Why do I do that? Well, for those of you familiar with cooking with catfish, for example, wild caught catfish, they sit in the mud all day. Unless you like the taste of mud, you probably want to soak in the buttermilk to extract that flavor and just leave the flavor of the meat. So alligators, same thing as like with a catfish. That is why it's been soaking. I've got a good amount of alligator in there too. I'd say there's maybe 1.75 pounds of alligator in there. So I'm going to lower the heat on this for now. Give it some stir, and I'm going to rinse the alligator, get rid of the buttermilk since it's already done its job. I'm going to rinse this baby out. And another thing about alligator, the part that you're most interested in, at least that I'm most interested in, is the tenderloin. In an alligator, the tenderloin is meat along the inside of the tail. So I only ever get tenderloin when I'm eating alligator. Not as firm, nice and soft. And we're going to add this, our final meat. And a little more seasoning for that too, for the alligator. And the reason I added the alligator last, alligator cooks very quickly. Well, quicker than the other meats. So I try to just prolong the amount of time it takes before I finally add it. That will be the last of the meats that we add for this. Next will be the rice and the stock. Okay, now that we've got our meats going and we're almost ready to add the rice, I'm going to add the final of the seasoning. I'm going to add 2 bay leaves and a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Don't need any more than that. And I'm also going to give it a healthy sprinkle of dried parsley leaves. As far as the rice goes, I'm just adding, because there's so much protein in there, taking up most of the dish, I'm going to add 2 cups of rice. And basically, they say it should be 1 part stock, 1 part rice. I'm going to be adding a little bit more than 1 part stock to it to compensate for all the protein that we've got in there. And the stock, I'm sorry, not the socks. We don't want to put socks in there. I learned that the hard way. We're not going to do that. We're going to add seafood stock. And this is homemade seafood stock. I will also include the recipe for that down below also. I figured if I went about talking about making seafood stock, I'd put everyone to sleep for sure. So I will just include the ingredients and the recipe for that. As you know, making stock is just a time-consuming process. Luckily, we have our stock all ready to go. Another spice, this is already in the magical spice mix that I'm mentioning. I'm going to add a little bit more cayenne pepper, because I'm just a big fan of the heat. Make it a little more spicy and exciting. Now, depending on your heat tolerance, you may want to add more or less. That's a personal taste. Try to incorporate it. And then we're going to toss in the rice and the stock. See, the alligator's already cooked down. Doesn't take long. Incorporate it well before we add the stock. Starting to smell like jambalaya. Okay. Last, but certainly not least, I want this whole thing submerged. It's going to be between 2 and 3 cups of stock for the 2 cups of rice that we've added. That's 2 cups of stock. And now, because we've added all that rice, we're going to re-season a little salt and a little fresh ground pepper. And the reason I'm using this pepper grinder, my mom and dad gave this to me years ago when I first started cooking. So it's not like one of those big fancy mills and all that, but it does great by me and has that emotional attachment. So I use this all the time. Perfect. It's easy to add salt, it's not easy to remove it. I think that's pretty well incorporated, if you ask me. I know no one's asking. Might want to even reduce it some more. Another long period of time. This takes about 30-35 minutes for it to all incorporate and the rice to be cooked through. I should set a timer. Okay. And there we go. Well, it smells really good. Oh, nice and thick. Thick gravy. Very seafoody. And yes, that is a word. Could have added a little more rice. I was being conservative, and instead of adding the full 3 cups, I only added 2 cups. Well, we are as done as we're gonna be. Back when I first put it on low or simmer to cook the rice down and get the rice cooked, first put it on boil, get it boiling good, rolling boil, then lowered the heat, gave it about 35 minutes, and yeah, we're pretty much done. Could have added a little bit more stock. I do that all the time, folks. I'm always critical of my own cooking, but that's how we grow and advance. a little bit of everything in it. Now the moment of truth. Now I was cheating before and taking a little sip, and I love the way the gravy was coming out. Let's see how, let's start with some rice and some andouille. Still piping hot. Taste that bell pepper. You taste the cayenne, the spice blend. Let's try some of that gator. And there we have it. I love it when it comes together. Everything is cooked the way I was expecting, so I'm a happy camper right now. And thank you for joining us on this video about Cajun Jambalaya, seafood jambalaya. In addition to cooking lessons or cooking instruction and giving out recipes, we will also be traveling. We'll travel to different destinations with different types of cuisine, get to review that food, get to learn a little bit about the cultures. It should be a good mix. We're planning a good mix, a good blend of travel, learning, and cooking in the kitchen, hands-on. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Hasta lasagna.